My name is Alika Gambill, and I've been sober for 2,092 days. I'm originally from the state of Hawaii, and I started drinking alcohol when I was 13. First time I drank, I was 13. First time I got drunk. First time I blacked out. First time I threw up, I was 13. And then I was 15 years old when I started experimenting with drugs. I got introduced to drugs. So being born and raised in Hawaii, the culture there is a lot different from California. You know, I've been living here for about 6 years now. And in the state of Hawaii, the respect is at the top of the food chain in the state of Hawaii. I give you guys a little tip. If you guys ever want to go to Hawaii, the fastest way to get beat up in the state of Hawaii is to honk your horn at a local person. You know, that is a huge sign of disrespect. That's why. So growing up that way, I grew up in a good family. I don't have this excuse of, oh, my mom left us, my dad beat us up, I was sexually abused and things like that. I know that's not my story. I grew up in a good childhood, a lot of structure, had a lot of love. I played every sport you can think of. But once I learned how to surf, like that was it. That's all I did. And then eventually, you know, I got deeper and deeper into the addiction. And, my dopamine levels at the time was spiking drastically. So things that used to interest me, like surfing and, other things, I just lost interest in it already, I paddled canoe competitively for 6 years as well. So I was always really physically active. Like, my body didn't always look this way, but when I was younger, I was so active. I wasn't the kind of person that went to the gym, like, and do it that way. My dad does that way. Like he's probably in the gym right now, honestly. But growing up in Hawaii like that, like a lot of my Samoan cousins, like all they gotta do is just touch the weight and boom, they just blow up. I don't know how to do that. I had to work for it. But I had a good childhood. I had presents under the tree every Christmas. There's no reason why, I turned out the way I did because of my childhood necessarily. My dad was a drug dealer. He was a big time gangster for about 6 years. When I was a kid, he had all kind of boats and cars and all this stuff, and he was in cahoots with the whole department of the state of Hawaii, the police department. So the feds had to come in and they was watching him, and I didn't know none of this stuff. And in the state of Hawaii, chicken fighting is popular. It's illegal, but it's popular. I get derbies all the time. Our backyard is filled with chickens, and my dad grew up real angry. So, I seen him beat people up and all this stuff and crazy things and breaking people's jaws, and he knocked out his friend right in our kitchen, I was a kid, and all this stuff, and holes in the wall, yelling at my mom, and to be honest, I learned a lot of my cuss words from my dad when I was just a little kid, and thank God he's not like that today, though. He's not like that today. But growing up and seeing all this stuff, I'm thinking, well, that made me escape who I really wanted to be, and I had somebody to point the finger at for all my problems now. I wasn't taking responsibility, wasn't taking accountability for anything, and I got sober in a 12-step program. In my book, it says men and women drink essentially for the effect it produces. However, I didn't know what it was like to be drunk before I drank. I didn't know what it was like to be high before I did drugs. So initially, what I wanted was what happened to me, because naturally I'm introverted. I believe, for me, I can't prove this though, but I believe my experiences growing up and seeing all these things that I probably shouldn't have seen, and my dad and the anger and beating people up, I went into myself. So because naturally I'm introverted. People have a hard time believing that today, but I am. Even to this day, I'm introverted. And so seeing all this stuff happen with my dad and this and that, and so I believed something about me to be true that was actually a lie. My mind told me something must be wrong with you, because all the other 2,000 family members I got, all of them, all extroverts, So I'm the only one that's pretty like introverted. Me and another older cousin, but me mainly, and I was thought, okay, something must be wrong with me. I wanted to be like everybody else. I was a big time follower. I was like, I want to be like them. I want to be accepted. That's what I was looking for. I want to be accepted. I want to be loved. I want to be cared for. I want to be heard. I want to be part of. I want to be included. I wanted to be one of the boys. That's what I wanted. So that's why I started drinking and using in the first place. But if you trace it back to its origin, I had one wrong thought that I believed to be true, that, hey, something's wrong with you because you're not like everybody else, type of thing. So now I know what it feels like to be drunk, to be high. So over time, I used it as my coping skill. Drugs and alcohol was always my solution. It never was my problem. I found out in the process of recovery And nobody told me this, nobody said this to me. I found it out in doing the work that I was the problem. It wasn't the state of Hawaii, it wasn't my dad, it wasn't all my ex-girlfriends. It was a thinking problem I had that manifested into a drink problem, drug problem, anger problem, control problem. You know, it all originated in my mind first. So people have often asked me, what's the most insane thing I've ever done? And you know, they're hoping to hear, oh man, you was involved with the cartel, or you ripped so and so off and stuff like that. Initially, what my answer would have been was, I remember it was in 2012 or 2013. I was living on Oahu. I was working as a valet in Waikiki, and I called out of work probably like 6-7 times already. So I'm thinking, man, what am I gonna do? I partied all night, worked 3 to 11, did drugs, drank all night. It's about 1 o'clock the next day, 1 p.m. and I'm supposed to be at work in 2 hours. So I'm in a parking garage, a couple blocks away from work. And I have this idea. I was like, oh, this is what I would do. So what I decided to do was punch myself in my face as hard as I could, as long as I could, as fast as I could, until my eye was swollen. And then I took a picture of myself, I sent it to my boss, made up some lie about what happened. I forgot what I said, honestly, just to get out of work. But this is the real answer though. There's one thing I've done, the most insane thing that blows everything else out of the water that I've done. The most insane thing I've ever done in my entire life is I made a decision in a sober state of mind to drink and use, knowing exactly what's gonna happen to me. So I got out of work that time. But once I start drinking, once I start using, I cannot stop. So it happened again and again. And my grandma died, and then the same grandma died twice, So eventually they let me go, and I started a career in the financial services industry. My dad is a natural entrepreneur. I started business with him. We were in the financial services industry, and I made a lot of money. I got good at it. And I started traveling all over the world. Like, we're going here, we're going there. I got all these chicks on my arm. Life is good, and at that time, I like to say that I was a functioning addict, but really the reality was I wasn't. I really wasn't. To the outside world, nobody would have looked at me saying, wow, this guy's in the Bahamas. He must be a drug addict. He must be an alcoholic. He's doing good. Like, no, nobody would have did that, because I knew I became such a good liar over the years. Very good at manipulating people. So to the outside world looking at me, nobody would have said, yeah, this guy's probably an addict or an alcoholic. People probably in recovery that came across me active in my addiction, they probably must have been like, oh bro, this guy's probably on a bus, if they ever met me. I'm not sure if that ever happened though. But I was functioning until I wasn't. So I remember I was studying for my securities exam to do investments. And I would be up at the office till like 2-3 in the morning studying for it. But however, I'm doing cocaine all night. So I'm not retaining nothing at all. And I go home, pretend to sleep for a few hours, gotta be back up, come back to the office. And it takes a heavy toll on your mental health. It does. And I had to meet with clients one-on-one. I had to meet with them and do presentations and and all this stuff. And I kept my drug use a secret from my immediate family for 20 years. Like, you gotta be good in line to do that. But everybody knew I drank alcoholically. So, I don't have this traditional story of, yes, I hit rock bottom and I decided to stop. I actually didn't get sober that way. I never got sober by reaching out my hand and asking for somebody for help. That's not my story. Long story short, what happened was we sold the business. I moved to California. I'm staying with my sister. And basically all my lies started compounding. And I was supposed to be home at 8 p.m. I got home at like 2 in the morning because I was up in Victorville. I bought my 8 ball of cocaine. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was 2016, early 17. There was a heavy rain and the 15 freeway broke. So there was traffic for like 10 miles long. That's why I got home so late. And I sold my cell phone so I can go buy some dope. We're very resourceful people. We'll figure it out. And so I get there and there's just lie on top of lie on top of lie on top of lie on top of lie. And the truth finally came out days later. But when the truth finally came out, my sister didn't even believe me already. And I get it. So I checked into a little motel next door to her house. Knock on the door the next day. It's her and my brother. I didn't even tell her where I was going, but she found me somehow. My brother and her knocked on the door, and I didn't know this, but my sister packed up all my stuff. They were sending me back to Hawaii. I was like, heck no, I ain't never going back. Everybody was trying to get into Hawaii. I was trying to get out of Hawaii because all I could see was all the people I used, all the women I used, all the people, all the drug dealers I owe money to, all the places I humiliated myself at. So I was like, no, I would rather be homeless in California than go back to beautiful Hawaii. But that's not my story. So once my secret came from the dark into the light, it was everything my mind told me that was gonna happen. Once everybody knew my secret, none of it happened. I don't know if you guys ever held secrets before, but I've held them for years. I gave all my secrets away in the process of recovery. So it was like, when you go into a dark room, I always use this analogy. When you go into a dark room and you turn on the light, you guys ever notice how the darkness never fights with the light to stay dark? It's gone. That's exactly how I felt when I brought my secret from the dark into the light. And my mind will tell me, man, your family not gonna love you, they're gonna talk about you, they're gonna hate you, they're gonna disown you. The opposite happened. My family got closer to me. They encouraged me more. They loved me more. I was like, my goodness. And my mind convinced me that was not gonna happen. And I just believed it, So after my secret came from the dark into the light, I immediately took action. Something that addicts and alcoholics know how to do is take action. We know how to do that. But because I had a desire for about 10 years into my addiction to get sober, but nothing happened. I hear people all the time talk about their desire, but their life's not changing. I wasn't willing to do certain things. That's what it was. So I got to the point where I became willing. And so my secret comes out in the dark, from the dark to the light. I immediately seek out treatment. My brother helped me apply for the covered California insurance. I'm trying to get into any treatment center that'll take me. I'm calling every day. They keep saying, call tomorrow. We don't got a bed, call tomorrow. So, 2 weeks or so goes by. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm going to go crazy or something. Because my sister works. I'm at home by myself. I'm like, oh no, it's not a good idea for me to be alone with me. It's not, especially at that time. And so I remember thinking, oh, wait, people get sober in these 12-step things. So let me look up a meeting. I looked up a meeting. There was one 2 miles down the road, and I got dropped off at my first meeting. I raised my hand. I identified as a newcomer. After the meeting was over, this big black guy, he beelines it right to me. He introduced himself. He shakes my hand. He bought me my book that I still have today. He gave me his phone number, and he said, here, call this guy. And that guy became my sponsor 4 days later. Because in that same meeting, I heard a lady say, if you want what we have, do what we do. And I started for the first time in my life listening, because I was really good at listening with my mouth and not with my ears. For the first time in my life, I'm listening with my ears. And I hear everybody start talking about a sponsor. And I kind of got the gist of it. It's somebody that's going to help me. And I was like, oh yes, I need that. So he became my sponsor 4 days later, and he's still my sponsor. And the rest is kind of history. So, in the beginning, I didn't want to die. That's what. I just didn't want to die. And then it turned into, now I want to live. Then it turned into, now I want to help somebody else. Because in order for me to keep what I got to give it away. But in order for me to give it away, I have to live it. I believe being an example of recovery is the most effective way to show other people that it's possible. Everybody can do this, but not everybody can practice these principles in all their affairs. All the principles that I learned in recovery, being of service. That's a big one, because I was only of service of me active in my addiction. Everything revolved around me. If I wasn't in control, I was out of control. And I found out later on in recovery, control was just an illusion. Anyways, and very narcissistic, that's why I was, big time. So, my sponsor, I met with him every Thursday. It took me 2.5 years to work all 12 steps. And this is something he taught me. One day he gave me a homework assignment. He said, here, go in the book, look where they talk about working steps multiple times. I said, okay, no problem. I come back following Thursday. I said, hey, sponsor, I couldn't find it. He goes, you know why? It's not in there. I'm like, why'd you tell me look for it then? But what the point he was making, he said, look, this is what he taught me. This is what I've learned. He said, a 10, 11, 12 step. 10, continue to take personal inventory. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, stay connected to your God. 12, carry this message to somebody else. He says, if you fail to 10, 11, 12 on a daily basis, moving forward, that prevents a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he says, if you fail to do this, your character defects will start flaring back up. You start turning selfish. You can still stay sober, definitely. You start copying resentments and all this. And then, okay, it'll make sense to work your steps all over again. So 10, 11, 12 on a daily basis is what he taught me. I'm not against anybody working 12 steps multiple times. I got friends that do it. Nothing wrong with that at all. But going back into being of service, and the principle in recovery about being of service drastically changed my life. Just like thinking about somebody other than myself, was impossible in my addiction. If I thought about you in my addiction, it's because you had something I wanted. Whether if you're a male or female. Females, I only wanted one thing from you, and I got it. Males, a little bit different. Could be money, could be stuff, could be clothes, could be a car or whatever. I was very good at manipulating, lying, so I could get what I wanted. And I really didn't. When I found out what I was suffering from, sobriety all by itself, it became really less attractive to me, honestly. When I found out what I was really suffering from, recovery got so much more important to me. Because I was taught, focus on your recovery and you will stay sober by default. But if you focus on your sobriety, you will not recover by default. And I was like, okay, that stuck with me. Because you separate me from drugs and alcohol, I can still lie to you. I can still manipulate you. I can steal your car. I can behave the same exact way. But I'm sober. Oh, big deal, you sober, So it was those character defects. Recovery fixed all the things in me that was broken. Sobriety never did none of that. The only thing sobriety ever did for me was it allowed my physical body a chance to heal. And since I've been sober, I save approximately $104,500 since I've been sober, So like learning this principle being instilled in me, August 19th of 2020, I had an idea. See, I like to say there's good ideas and there's God ideas. I believe this one was a God idea. So I had an idea about this is the thought I had. Man, in the middle of the pandemic, how can I help somebody that's still struggling out there, that does not have the same resources I had when I got sober, because everything was shut down. So what I started to do was I thought of a name. First name that came to my mind, honestly, was Pro Recovery Power. First name that came to my mind. And I liked it because I'm much more pro recovery and I'm less anti-addiction. Because being anti-addiction is problem focused. I'm much more solution oriented today because of the process of recovery. And there's a lot of power in that. And I just started a page on Instagram. That's how we started. We're just a page on Instagram, posting inspirational things, stuff like that. And then I had the idea of going live with another addict, another alcoholic. And it didn't matter to me how somebody got sober. I went live with people for almost about a year and a half, and was on Saturday and Sunday at 12 noon and 3 p.m. And it didn't matter to me. Like people, they got sober through church, 12 steps, smart recovery, God snapped his fingers, therapy, treatment. It didn't matter to me because, that inspires hope. It didn't matter how they got sober. That inspires hope, and the world needs more of that. And I was committed to doing that. Then I created a YouTube page. Then I started creating recovery clothing. Then we created a website. Then I was running panels locally in my area. The last idea was nonprofit. And then we started a nonprofit and we started hosting different sober events. So the nonprofit now, this is a good example of recovery, what recovery taught me, because there's 3 essentials I learned. For me, I say there's 4. There is honesty, willingness, open-mindedness. For me, is God. So keeping an open mind is crucial because the nonprofit idea wasn't my idea. It was my wife's idea. And I was a little frustrated I had a vision, write it down and make it plain. That's what my Bible says. So I had a vision of what I wanted to look like, but it was missing something. And my wife one day, she just says, babe, why don't you start a nonprofit? Boom. That was the piece of the puzzle that was missing. And so I started a nonprofit. It took us a while because I didn't know this. As in the process, I found out there's 90,000 applications each year that's submitted. Plus, on top of that, COVID, the IRS was short-staffed. It usually would have taken about 2-3 months. It took us almost a year to get the EIN number, the charitable status, all that kind of stuff. So as a nonprofit, part of our long-term goals is to scholarship people through treatment, but that takes money, and it's not cheap. It's expensive. Another goal we have that's more obtainable, we helped a guy a couple months ago. He never worked for 6 years. He worked cash jobs, no got a resume, nothing like that. He's trying to get into a sober living, if he wants to get into sober living. So I'm connected in the recovery community. I called a few places, found him a bed. He got kicked out 2 days later, found him another one, and he's still in now today. Paid for his rent. His rent got paid for, and now he's okay. He's working now. He got a job. He's okay. And so then another type of thing we do to help people is we host events, big sober parties, inspiration nights, and we also educate the community. So the sober parties is cool because I created these safe places for people like us to come, have fun, and get connected and stay connected. Because the opposite of addiction is connection, and it's so cool, like seeing people there. We got free food, we got live DJ and all this stuff, and we did a panel. The last event we did, we had a panel, and it was pretty cool. So with Pro Recovery Power, our slogan is a mind change is a life change. I'm totally convinced if you can change your mind, you can change your life. And I can speak with such conviction about that because it happened to me. It's not like I seen it happen for someone else or I watched it in a movie, but there's a lot of work that's involved in changing your mind. So if you guys do want to attend one of our events, you guys can follow us on social media, Pro Recovery Power. You can check out the website. It's prorecoverypower.com. We are a fully functional 501c3 nonprofit organization committed to helping those who have been afflicted by the disease of addiction.